Okay, I don't know how to start this, so we're gonna just start it however works. I'm going to show you how to make Venus. Let me move this out the way. Just, yeah, let me just... Gone. Okay. I'm gonna show you how to make Venus. These don't use sky atmospheres. These don't use directional lights. They don't use anything that would require a directional light. Most of the time when people make atmospheres, it's mainly a directional... What am I saying? They use directional lights to make an atmosphere. And the problem with that is they're not oriented. It's only in one direction. So no matter where you orientate, let's say Venus, for example, it's always going to be lit on this side. But if you look carefully, you see that sun's in a 3D space. If I move Venus over here, for example, you're going to see that it lights up. If I could slow down, that'd be lovely. It lights up according to the sun's direction, which is nice. It's nice to have. I'm going to show you how to make the planet and the atmosphere. This is going to be relatively on the harder side of all things considered. But it should be relatively easy. There are some things that are optional, but you can add them if you want. Like, for example, like I said, I'm not using any sky atmosphere. Sky atmospheres are beautiful, granted, but you can only have one of them. More than one, you start to have issues with clipping or whatever the issue is. But with this is a material, so as you can see, you can kind of see through here. In fact, let me pull up an image of Venus here. Here we go. So here's an image of Venus. Probably should find a better image, actually. Venus. Boom, and boom. Fuck it, this one. So you could see Venus, there's a little bit of see-through to the ground showing orange. Venus itself is actually, I think, mainly basaltic rock. So it's a very gray landscape. But due to the atmosphere, it makes it look very orange, as shown in whatever the hell you want to call this. So, however you choose to color it, you can go more in depth, but this is simply showing the ground, but the atmosphere is coloring it orange. Then you can faintly see, if you're really looking, I'm sure there's another image here. This one's even better showing it. There are tints of blue at the poles. There is some at the top. And if I don't remember what chemical component there is, but there's a certain chemical component that's on the north and south poles that in theory can make blue light scatter. So it is a very faint piece of coloring, but it is there. But looking at Venus here, you can see, like I said, you could see a little bit through some of that coloring. So if you can really pay attention, you could see a little bit of that rock. You can actually see it from here. You could see a little bit of that rock, a little bit of that orange-yellow rock, and some of these clouds. Some clouds are moving left, some clouds are moving right. You don't know. They're completely random. There is a glow effect, which is green. And again, I don't remember what Venus is comprised of, or composed of, I should say. It's been a minute, but the chemicals and components that Venus makes up is going to scatter a bit of green to orangish light. So if you are going to use a sky atmosphere, keep that no, green to oranges around where you're gonna scatter the light. But from an angle, in fact, if I hide the sun there for a second, that is huge. You could see a faint green halo. That is a local fog volume. In fact, I'll show you. This is comprised of a few things. The Venus over here In fact, let me close everything else so I don't overwhelm you. That should be fine. Venus, and inside Venus we have a local fog volume, which is going to give this glow effect, and the atmosphere, which is going to act as these cloud layers. In fact, if I disable all, you can see this is Venus. Both the local fog and atmosphere are disabled. There's nothing. If I enable the local fog, you can see, in fact it even starts here as well, that it's scattering some of that light. Don't mind the weird bugs that you see with the lighting, how it kind of warps in and out. That's mainly because I'm using such tiny scales and the local fog volume needs a higher resolution to accommodate for it being so small. So you would think it being smaller means more performance, but you need a higher resolution, which causes more frame rate loss, blah, blah, blah. But this will disappear the bigger your planet is. In fact, if I go all the way over here to say Jupiter, you can see that it is much, much fainter. You can barely notice it. This is only, well, slightly, I think this is only 10 meters big. So still very small, but much bigger than the one over there. And you can even see it. It is there. But albeit you don't see that issue more prominently than over there. I will show you how to make all the planets. But for now, we're working with Venus. So let me go to Venus. Nope, that's the sun. Where is it? Here it is. And then, yeah, we're going to work on the atmosphere, which holds it all together. And if you look closely, even the atmosphere itself holds a bit of that green at an angle, which is nice. So we'll enable that. You don't need the local fog volume because there are some issues with it. For example, if I move Venus, you can see that it leaves a very nasty trail. If I turn the local fog volume off, it disappears. So up to you if you want that outer glow effect. Does it look nice? Hell yes. Is it worth it? It's for you to decide. One thing I want to note, if you do decide to use this, is if the resolution of your fog is too low, you can actually type in r.volumetric fog.grid pixel size. Original value, I think, is 8. Before you type anything in, if you type in exactly that with no number, hover over it, it'll say current value. That is your default value. I think it's 8, or maybe 16, somewhere around there. But if I say, let's say 10, it's going to be much lower resolution. You can even see it's very low res. And if I up the resolution, let's say 4, it gets tighter, which makes it a higher resolution. You can do lower values. The lower the value, the more resolution to your fog. I do not recommend touching 1. Probably going to crash your engine. Just stick with 2 if your computer can handle it. That's going to lag very bad. Or 4. But once again, it depends on your size and scale. So 16 might actually be a good value, and 10 might be somewhat okay. Hell, maybe even 32, depending on how big you make it. It depends. But I suppose we can work on this now. So firstly, we're going to work on this. You don't technically need a high resolution center because you're not really going to see it. If you choose to use a high resolution center, you can, but it's not entirely needed. So if I go down to planets, textures, actually before I do that, you're going to want to make a sphere. You can, in theory, go to place actors, basics, and, or no, it was shapes, I think. Yes, shapes. You could spawn a sphere. This can work temporarily, but if you do, let's say, wireframe, you're going to notice, and we'll do lit wireframe, you're going to notice that the polygon count is much lower than this. The whole sphere is about like 50 polygons of a face on this. And this causes issues because you can see the edges sharply as you look along the edge, and it's going to create very sharp shadows. So, or very edgy shadows, I should say. With ray tracing, it kind of helps blur the line a bit, but you're going to see that it's going to create a very low shadow. One disclaimer I will say before making anything further, I am using ray trace translucency. You can choose not to use ray trace translucency. So for example, if I go to the post-process volume, scroll down, where is it? Here we go. Translucency method. If you don't know what I'm doing, you're going to want to go to your place actors and go to VFX. And there should be post-process volume. You can drag that and drag it somewhere in the scene. I'm not going to do that because I already have one. And somewhere in your outliner, maybe this is on the right side, left side, I put it on the left, click it, and you're going to see all this. This is just general post-process like depth of field, lumen, stuff like that. In fact, let me turn that back on. I had that off or something. Okay. So if you scroll down, somewhere down here, yeah, you're going to see translucency method. This is going to be off by default. If you turn this on, it's going to be on raster mode, or rasterization. Here's the thing with rasterization. While, let me turn off the local fog volume so you can get a clear look of the planet. Here's the problem. If you don't have ray tracing, use rasterization. If you do have ray tracing available to you, use ray traced. It's going to make everything look a lot better with very minimal performance cost. Rasterization is going to give you a clearer look of the planet because ray tracing, for some reason, if someone knows why, ray tracing for translucent materials, aka translucency being semi-opaque objects, for some reason they come out blurry. So, for example, let's say all this. You can see every little individual pixel of the cloud. If I switch to ray traced, it blends that all together, which personally I think looks better. But it's entirely up to how you want the game to look. So if you can use ray traced, I recommend using ray traced, but if you want to use rasterization, you can. This will affect how the look of the atmosphere comes out. So for example, if I go to Earth being a much more dramatic example, you can see it's intensely blue. But if I switch to ray traced, it's a lot more muted. It's a little more realistic. You can counter that, and I'll show you how to. But rasterization, if you can't use ray traced, use rasterization. It's gonna be just as good, but there are going to be some downsides. So I'll even show you here in a second. If we use rasterization, you can see shadows do not work on the atmosphere. And this is going to be a big problem because it looks disgusting. If that's something you don't really care about, then be my guest. But you can see, if I actually I should turn off the atmosphere. You could see the shadow is working on the planet because this is an opaque material. But the moment you turn on the atmosphere, it doesn't work. But if you are using ray traced instead of rasterization, it will work perfectly fine, no issues whatsoever. So I highly recommend ray traced. If you can't, rasterization will be just as good, but there are some downsides. Another thing with ray traced, and this is an issue I've yet to figure out. I don't know if this is a limitation of the engine or it's something I'm just not understanding. But once again, at a distance, rasterization works 100% of the time, zero issues. But if you do ray traced, for some reason, at a distance, it disappears. I don't know how to quite explain it. If I duplicate the atmosphere, it doesn't disappear, but it's almost like the mesh that has the atmosphere translucent material that is set to ray traced shrinks. I don't know what that is. I don't know why this happens. If someone could understand why this happens, that would be greatly appreciated. Because at a distance, it starts to look very stupid. But that's the downside of that. If you're fine with that, be my guest. This becomes I believe it becomes a much bigger issue with bigger objects. But the smaller the object, the less prominent it becomes. So, onto the main thing. How to make the center core first. Like I said, you're going to want to make a 3D mesh. If you don't want to, you don't have to, but it's highly recommended. You're going to want to go in somewhere like a application Blender, perhaps, to make a mesh. Just simply go to Blender, delete everything, spawn a sphere, and subdivide it a few times. There's plenty of tutorials on YouTube on how to do that. But once you do that, you can export it as an FBJ or FJF, something like that. FBJ, I think it's what it's called. And you're going to want to import it into your engine. Once you do that, you'll have your sphere. Now let's say this is the sphere. We're going to use this for an example. We're going to go to Venus. And Venus material. So this is what it's going to look like. Very easy. Very, very easy. There's like no reason you should be confused. Unless you're new to nodes, then I'll give you the benefit of the doubt here. So, firstly, you're going to want to go somewhere on the internet. You're going to want to watch out for, if you're planning on publishing this as a public piece, you're going to want to be careful. If you go on the internet, let's say Venus material, or texture, I should have said. There's a website called Solar System Scope. And if you click it, it'll take you to a page that has a lot of materials. Things like Mercury, Venus, Venus atmosphere, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Saturn rings, etc. And a bunch of other things like fictional ones, moons, Earth. But you're going to want to download the Venus surface. Preferably if your computer can handle it, 8K. 2K seems like a lot, but putting a 2K image or even an 8K image on a sphere stretches the material. So you're going to want to download an 8K if you can, and Venus 4K if you can. Once you download those, drag those into your content browser. I recommend, if you can, somewhere on your desktop, have a file that holds all your stuff. So just in case something happens, you have those assets available to you. So now, you have them in your content drawer. Here's what you're going to do. Create a material. You're going to want to right click, create material, and you're going to want to name it something. Name it Venus or Venus material. Doesn't matter. And it's going to create this. You're going to want to right click this, create material instance, and it's going to create another one of the same thing. Now you're going to click your mesh where it says materials on the right side, where it says basic sphere mesh. You're going to want to take the dark green, which is the instance constant, drag it onto here. And this will create this. It may look like a grid for right now because we haven't done anything, but you're going to want to double click the actual material. Not the material instance, but the material. Double click it, this should open. Granted, it should look like this. Like this, with absolutely nothing. You're going to want to hold this, left click it, drag, and drag it onto your plane. And it should spawn this. Now, you can directly drag this into your base color. It will be perfectly fine. But if you feel that it's too vibrant, you can create a desaturation node. So let me recreate this for you. Left click this, drag it out, type in desaturation, and then drag this into the base color. But if you do that, you'll notice it becomes fully black and white. you can mitigate this by holding S and left click, and it will create a parameter node. You can call this anything, doesn't matter, but preferably something that makes sense, like color, or saturation, or desaturation, something you'll recognize later. And then you're going to want to drag that into the fraction. Now, this is a constant value between 0 and 1. So if I do 1, it's fully desaturated. If I do 0, it's original color. If I do 0.5, it's going to be the blend between fully desaturated and fully saturated. If you decide, for some unholy reason, to go above 1, it will invert the color and saturate it from there. If you do a negative value, it's going to take the base color and saturate it. That's what it's going to do. So if you feel like it's too desaturated, you could saturate it by doing a negative number. Or if you feel like it's too saturated, you can do something like 0.3 and it will continue forward. And then you just drag this into base color. Personally, I think it's fine because the atmosphere is going to cover 90% of this. So I left it at 0. I kept this here just in case I wanted to change it in the future. But you can easily just drag it into base color. Once you do that, press apply and save. And you're going to want to close that. So now your sphere should look like this. Now onto the fun part. The thing that makes it look like Venus, the atmosphere. We're going to... I think we could do this one. We're going to do something. First of all, we're going to look on the left. You can name this anything. We'll call this tutorial _ Venus. You could just name it Venus. You're going to want to click it. If it's anything like this or this, you're going to want to press W. And this will allow you to change the left and right position, up, down, stuff like that. So I will make this 0, so it's on the 0 plane. But you're going to want to hold left click, click one of the arrows, and drag it out. Now, for the sake of knowing what it looks like, you're going to want to click the arrow. So this, or the arrow over here to reset it. So now it should look like this. You're going to want to go to where it says, I'm assuming it says Venus 2, but for me, Venus Tutorial, or Tutorial Venus 2. Drag this into Tutorial Venus, or Venus. So now it's a child of this one. Now, change the Z-axis to 0, and you're going to see it absolutely fight the living shit out of the corners of every possible edge. Now, what you can do is press R, or if you feel more control with it this way, you can go to the scale on the right side, make sure your Tutorial Venus 2, or if you want, name this Atmosphere. This will be the atmosphere. Make it something slightly larger than the original mesh, like 1.001 or 5 if you choose so. Now it's going to completely cover the original material. So if I disable atmosphere, we're going to see that it is properly there. Now let me go to my atmospheres, pale yellow. Okay. Now you're going to want to create a folder, or if you want, right next to where you have your textures and your Venus material, right-click, create a new material, call it atmosphere or whatever you have. Once again, rasterization is going to look vastly different than ray traced. Ray traced values that I give may come off vastly different than rasterization. So the blues at the poles, I don't even think I even showed you either. The blues at the poles might become more prominent. So let me actually test that just to prove a point. Okay, it just becomes severely brighter, like overall. This planet just becomes unnecessarily bright. But with Earth you saw from before, it becomes a lot more saturated. This happens with literally any atmosphere that's not straight clouds. But you're gonna double click your create a material, open it, and here's what this looks like firstly. It looks like a lot, but I'm gonna try to go through you every single step just so it isn't too overwhelming. So, let's go to Venus. Let's create a new material. I'm gonna call this Atmo_test. Click your material, your atmosphere actual mesh, where you have your material. Right click this, create instance, leave it as is, drag the instance into there. And now it should look like this. Now, double click your atmosphere, actual material, not the instance. If it'll open, that'd be lovely. Okay. Oh boy, this is where things are gonna go crazy. Okay. First things first, you're gonna wanna remove the reflective shininess because this isn't a metal ball. So you have two options. You can either go to the specular over here and set this to 0 and 0. This will make it completely opaque, or sorry, not 0 for roughness, 1. You're going to want 1 to make it completely rough and the specular completely 0, which is no reflections. Go to the left side where you see blend mode. If you don't see it and it looks like something, just click somewhere off the grid, somewhere empty, and it should fix itself. Click opaque, change it to translucent. Now scroll down to lighting mode under translucency. Click volumetric non-directional and change it to surface forward shading. Now give it a second. It should, there we go. Now this is going to be a translucent material that has proper lighting. So you have two options. You can either change this to 0 or 1, or you can hold S, change the parameter, call it specular, leave it at 0, and hook it into specular. Why I'm using parameters is because in the future, in your material instance, you can change those values on the fly. So as you're doing other things, if you don't want to go into the material graph, in your material instance, you can just say, oh, I want more reflection, so I'm going to change the specular parameter from 0 to 1, or 1 to 0 on the roughness if you want more reflection, stuff like that. So it's entirely up to you if you choose to use parameters. I'm going to not use them for the sake of I already have the value. Now we're going to do something simple first. Well, simple in quotations, because there's quite a bit here. Okay. So for the sake of speeding things up, drag your atmosphere texture that you got from the website, not the surface texture, but the atmosphere texture. Drag that into your atmosphere material. And it should look like this. For the sake of it being a big material from what we saw before, we're going to work on the opacity first, and it's going to be this whole block. So move this somewhere like down here. Okay. Now, you're going to want to create a panner node. You can, actually, just so you can follow along, right-click somewhere, type in panner. And drag the panner into UVs. Now, right-click again, type in texture, chord, and drag that into texture, coordinate into coordinate. Now click this where it says speed and X and Y. You can have either a positive number or a negative number, it doesn't matter. but I'm going to go negative. So negative 0.005. This is going to be a very slow panning left and right. I think left, since it's a negative. Now you're going to want to bring this out into a desaturation. And you're going to drag this out into a power node. Desaturation, we went over what this does. Desaturates the texture between fully saturated and black and white. Power nodes are going to crunch the... In fact, I'll click this to preview it. The little arrow kind of previews what it's going to look like before you plug it in. The power node is going to crunch the darkness between the lights. So if a texture is slightly dark in this area, and let's say lighter in this area, a higher power means it's going to darken the darks way more. And you might be asking, why am I doing this? You're about to find out very quickly. So we're going to hold S, left click, create a panner node, or not a panner, a parameter node. Name this power, or anything you want. I'm going to name it power 2. Drag that into here. Now you're going to notice it goes completely white. That 0 means there's no darkness. Absolutely 0 blacks. But 1 means the base texture, what it's going to normally look like. It's leaving the darks at a default 1 value. If I do a value of 2, you're going to see 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's going to, darken those blacks a lot more. We're going to leave it at 7. Now we're going to bring this out. We're going to stop previewing for a second. Bring this out. Make a multiply node. Drag this out. Once again, S, left click. Name this brightness. And drag it into the B. This is going to be the overall brightness of the clouds. So we're going to make this a value of 5. And as you can see, the clouds look much brighter. If I do a value of 1, they're much darker. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, or 8. Clouds are going to be brighter. But for the sake of keeping everything exactly how it should, leave it at 5. If you think the clouds are not as bright, you can always come back and change that. So drag this out and drag it into an add node. An add node is basically going to layer something. So if you were to use a multiply node, for example, a multiply node is simply going to merge the layers. And an add node is going to layer them on top of each other. Right now, since there's nothing in the B, just a value, it's going to be slightly opaque. Okay, not slightly, very opaque. This means it's adding a 1 value, a color, on red, green, and blue. It's not always going to be color. You can plug anything into this. Most of everything, at least. But since it's a value of 1, it's plugging in red, green, and blue, and just layering it on top of everything, which is what we don't want. So we're going to redo this. So we're going to drag this down a little bit, stop previewing, and we're going to left click, Control C, Control V somewhere in the port. You're going to copy and paste it. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to type in texture coordinate. We're going to drag this into something new called a 1- node. And then drag this into panner. Drag that out a little bit. And then put that in the V's. A 1- node reverses the coordinates. If I'm not mistaken, this simply just makes the texture upside down. I think. I do believe that's what it does. Yes, it just flips the texture upside down because we're putting the texture coordinate, we're flipping the coordinates in a reverse format, which is upside down, putting it into the panner, which is panners going into the UVs. UVs act as the mapping. So the whole texture as a whole. Now go back to the speed for the panner node. Do the same thing. negative 0.005. Okay. Now, we're going to stop previewing that. We're going to drag this out into a saturation. We don't want saturation. You're probably wondering why I'm using a desaturation node. We don't want saturation in an opacity because that color is going to change how the opacity behaves. We want complete black and white for opacity. And we're going to take that to saturation into a power node. Now, again, you could hold S, left click, create a parameter, call it power 3, or if you so choose to just put the number, make it a number of 7. And drag this out into a multiply. Once again, hold left click, S, left click, create a parameter, call it brightness 2, drag that into there, and make that a value 5. So you might be thinking, well, why did we just recreate the whole thing from scratch? We didn't. We reversed the coordinates, so now it's upside down. So now that we pan it here, you're going to see it's going left and right. The reverse coordinates flips the texture upside down. So if I click this, you're going to see it's going all right. If I click this one, you're going to see it's going left. But how is that the case if both panners are negative 0.005? That's because they are going the same direction, but this texture's just flipped upside down, which means the value is going to be the opposite. So this is going to flip it. And now we have clouds going left and right. Okay. Now we're going to take this add node, drag it out, create another add node, and drag that into the B, or A, doesn't really matter. To quickly remove something, a little tip for anyone watching, if you have it going into, let's say, B, and you want it to go into A for organization, like let's say there's a multiply node down here, and you want that multiply to go in here. These are crossing, and this is going to confuse some people. You might be thinking, oh, I can just kind of do it like this. No, I want this to go down here, so it's a little neater. You want it to look like this, so it's a little neater. To do that, if your node is on the wrong position, it's not going to affect it, but visually, this might mess with some people. Hold Alt, left click to completely remove it. Or, if you have a lot of nodes going on and you don't want to fully remove it and you might forget what that other node was, you could hold Control, hold left click, and you can drag it around. And then you can drag it into the position that you want while still holding left click. So, that's how you do it. But for the sake of this, we're keeping it on B, just to keep things a little neater. Now, we're going to create another parameter, call it brightness. Brightness, let's say, I have 2 values. Oh, because I misspelled brightness, that's crazy. I was going to say, why is it the same? So this is brightness 1, this is brightness 2, this will be brightness 3. So name this brightness 3. And now, make this value a value of 1.2. And put it into A. Now before we go any further, this is simply going to brighten the overall opacity to give it a more opaque look. Without this, to give you an idea, this Venus, you see how, if I could slow down, that'd be lovely. You see how you can kind of see through? It's still somewhat kind of opaque, but you can kind of see through. That's what this is. This is going to give a slight opaque look. Without fully making, without that value, without the brightness here, if we just simply drag this into something else and ignore this, the in-between areas are going to be crystal clear. You're going to see through like there's no atmosphere, which looks terrible. So we're going to drag this into a multiply node. Let's drag this out, multiply. Once again, hold the control, left click if you so choose to, drag it into the B, create opacity. This is, ooh, shit, no, not that. Hold on, I completely forgot. S, left click, name it opacity. And then drag this into there. And name this a value of 7. What this is going to act as the general opacity of it. So a lower value means the atmosphere is going to be less opaque, and higher values means it's going to be a much thicker atmosphere. I'll show you it a little later. Let me see, how long has this recording been going on for? 40 minutes. Okay, we can speed this up. Okay, take this up, go into a divide, and make this a value of 10. You do not want to change this later, so we're not using a parameter. Leave it as is, change it to 10, and let's move from here. Now we're going to split into 2 areas. Drag this out into a lerp. And leave this as is. I'll explain what a lerp is in just a moment. Drag this out into a multiply node. So now you should have the divide going into 2 pieces. And then drag the multiply into the B. Drag this out, create, not drag it out, S, left click, make this opacity Fresnel. Make this a value of 1, drag it in here. Okay. Now, S, left click, name this Fresnel EXP, and S, left click to create another one. Call it Fresnel base reflection. Hold on, can't see. Reflection. Make the top one 3 and the bottom one 0.05. Now you're gonna want to drag the Fresnel EXP out here to a Fresnel, and it should look like this. Make sure it's going into the EXP slot, or exponentin, just the top, and have the bottom one go into the base reflect. So it should look like this. Now you're going to want to take the output of a Fresnel and put it into the alpha. Now let me explain a few things. Firstly, divide is taking a division point from the opacity. It's pretty, we all know what a division is. Opacity Fresnel is going to be the opacity of the base Fresnel itself. Fresnel exponent. This is going to be, let me click this. This is going to be the thickness between opaque and dark. So if I make it a low value, this means it's going to be a much broader length between bright and dark. And if I do a high number like 20, it's going to be super tight. That's what she said. And it's going to be extremely close to the edge. So the threshold between bright and dark is super thin. But we're going to leave this on 3. A Fresnel is simply what you see here. It's going to be a outer rim. You ever see a game like Call of Duty, or any game like Overwatch, or what's some other games? Rainbow Six Siege. Any game that outlines something. Chances are it's going to be a Fresnel. Unless it's like an overlay for like Rainbow Six Siege. If you look at a drone that Mozzie hit, it's not going to be a Fresnel, but a general post-process outline over the actual mesh. But this is acting like a glow around an object. It can work on players, it can work on anything. If you want to make a game where your player or the enemy glows red on the outlines of it, you're going to want to create a Fresnel. Now, bring this to the alpha. Now, what is a lerp? A lerp is a lerp interpolate, which means it's going to, correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone knows, a lerp is kind of the middle ground between point A and point B. So for example, the best way I can put it is in an animation form. Let's say I have a box on this right here, and I want it to go over here. Instead of the animation that I have going from here to instantly over here, a lerp will lerp the animation frames. So it will make it move here, then here, then here, then here, then here, all the way until it reaches the endpoint. This is kind of the same in node form for materials. It's going to merge them in a lerpy way. I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm explaining that correctly, but just Google what a lerp is, and it'll give you a better example than I ever could. Now drag this into opacity. Now let's stop previewing, and you're going to see something very interesting here. Let it load. You're going to see that it looks like this. Now you might be thinking, this looks pretty terrible. Why does it look like this? This doesn't look like Venus. Calm down. Calm down there, convoy. Now, we're going to work on the colors. This is where things start getting very vicious here. You're going to want to come over here, somewhere a little ways away, not too far. Hold 3, left click. Now, you're going to want to create a color. Make it like a slight yellowy-ish color. Let's say... that should work. A slight whitish yellow. Nothing crazy. Drag this out, right-click it, convert to parameter. So now it's a parameter. You can name this, click it, where it says parameter name. You can name it anything, like inner color. And drag this out into a multiply. Make a parameter, call it inner color intensity. Drag it into here. And make this value 0.02. You need low values. Don't try a high value. You're going to wash out the color. You might be thinking that's the point of Venus. It's a very washed out white planet from the outside. You're going to see if you try messing with it. So come down again, create another one, 3, left click, convert to parameter first, or later, doesn't matter. Make this a baby blue that's washed out. A little more on the blue end maybe. Something like... yeah, perfect actually. That could work. Something like that. Name this Ray, L-E-I-G-H, Rayleigh Low. Rayleigh is a not too complicated term, but I'm the best at explaining. So drag this out into a multiply. Rayleigh is the act of light scattering. On Earth, Rayleigh scattering brings out the reds in our atmosphere. The sun hits our atmosphere, scatters the blue light, creating a blue atmosphere. And during sunsets, the sun hits more of that atmosphere. There's more atmosphere between us, our eyes, and the sun, which it scatters more of that blue light. Lacking the blue light makes more red. So we're taking the Rayleigh low, drag this out into the A, create a parameter again, call it Rayleigh low intensity. Make this a value of 0.05. Drag this out. Come down again. And now this is going to be something different. Create a parameter. Call it color blend 2. Make it a value of 6. Drag this out into a Fresnel. Now drag this out into a clamp. Now for your Fresnel here, you're going to want to make this 0.2 instead of 0.04 or whatever value it just was. So now that you've done that, you're going to want to take out a lerp node. So right click, lerp. You should have this. Just connect them as such, like this. Now I'm going to show you. This is what it is currently. This acts as the color of the center, a very broad white color. It's not looking like a lot, but trust me when I say this, it's going to matter. Okay. So now, the blue acts as the outer edge. And then the intensity, you can change the intensity of the color of the blue, blah, blah, blah. For example, if I do 1, it's going to make it so much more prominent. If I make it 6, it's going to become so bright that it's going to look white, almost like Earth's atmosphere. So change this back to 0.05 and leave it as that. Now come down. Make another one. 3, left click. Right click, convert to parameter. Now, this is going to be an interesting color. We're going to want a very purpley color. Something like that. Okay. Drag this out into a multiply. Gotta be quick, because this is getting a little long. S, left click. Call it center blue atmo for atmosphere. And also, if you want, you can name this to center atmo. Now, I said center blue atmo. This is technically not blue, but due to the ray trace translucent materials that we said earlier, this is going to appear as blue. If the colors look off from what's in the video, just simply change the values of a color on these listings to maybe, if yours is a little more saturated, make it more white. So this is less saturated, but we're not going to do that. Assuming you're using ray tracing. If you're not using ray tracing, again, just change the values. It'll work the same. Change this value to 0.03. Drag this into the B. Okay. Now create another one. Convert to parameter. Call it red relay. Hold on, I forgot that. Ray, not Ray, not Re. Relay. And make it a very mud green. So we'll say something like perfect, something like that. Now again, take this up to a multiply. Control S. Or not Control S, S left click. Call it red ray lay. Again, this is not red, but I'm giving you an idea for Earth. This is what would be red. So you can just copy this material and then change the colors based on what Earth would be. So you're understanding this would be the red. So this is the sunset. That's how you know that this is what this would be. So this would be the sunset color. Drag this into B. Change this to 0.04. Bring this up. And now come down again. Gotta be quick because we're getting a little close to that. Actually, let me move this. Okay, beautiful. Now, left click, or S left click, call it color blend. Fuck it, color blend. Name it, not name it, number 4 in the value. Break it out, Fresnel. Once again, 0.2 in the base refraction, refraction. Taking it to a clamp. Now take out a lerp. Bring this into the alpha, this into the B, oops, and this into the A. So now, if I bring these down, it should look like this. So now you have 2 lerps. Now how do you mix these two? Easy. Make another lerp. You make another lerp. Bring this into the A, this into the B. Now you may be wondering, how do I make the alpha work? What do I put in the alpha? We don't have anything extra. You're absolutely right. S, left click, name it something. Anything, doesn't matter. Take it to an exponent for Fresnel. Once again, 0.2 for the middle piece. Take it to a clamp. And then bring this into the alpha. So it should look something like this. Now you come over here, take this out into a multiply, and an S left click. Atmosphere intensity. This is going to be the overall intensity of the atmosphere. Bring this into the B and make this a value of, let's say, anything from 10 to 100. Anything that looks good to you. So you're going to see that it is quite bright. If I do 10, it's going to be darker. If I do 1, it's going to be darker. Higher values wash out more color. So if I do 100, you're going to see that outer edge becomes very white. But if I do 1, you can see that green. So let's do 100. If you're using ray caster, I think it's called, rasterization. If you're using rasterization, you might need to tweak this to a lower value. Higher values mean more washed out colors. And Venus is quite washed out. So we're going to drag this out into a multiply. Once again, put it in the B. We're going to drag this up. Now we're going to start something new. Something right here. We're going to take a texture coordinate. That's a texture sample. Texture coordinate. Copy it, paste it again. Let's take this into a panner. And duplicate it and put it there. So now we have two panners, two texture coordinates. Make the speed on the X on the top one negative 0.0002. Maybe it was not 3 zeros. Yes, it was 2 zeros. My apologies. 0.002. If you do anything more than that, it's just going to default to 0. Do the same on the other side, but a positive value. Now, you're going to want to take your texture sample from the opacity section, left click it, Control C to copy it, Control V, Control V. So now we have two texture samples. In fact, let me move this up a little bit. Okay. Drag these into the UVs. All right. Take it to saturation node on both. To saturation. And take these out into a multiply. Oh, I'm an idiot. I misspelled multiply. Multiply. Now, again, it doesn't matter what orientation. If you choose to, you can, like I said, hold Control, left click to fix them so it's a little more organized. Now take this out. I'll put into, I believe, this. Let me quick double check. Yes, you're gonna want to do that. So now it looks like this. And I want to confirm that yes, it should look in a similar sense. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take this out, output of the multiply into a lerp, put it in the B. This A is going to go to something completely different. Hold S, left click, call it lerp alpha. And make it like 0.4. Drag that into the alpha. Now ignore the top lerp for a second. You're going to want to take this lerp and put it into the base color. Like that. So now your planet should look something like this. So now, if I go up, okay, this is where things are going to get interesting. Technically speaking, it is almost done. So we're going to come up here. If the blue is too much, you can always lower it. Or perhaps something else is too bright. You can always change the, values. But we're going to leave it for now. We're not going to touch it. We're going to come up here. We're going to create, once again, a dual texture system. We're going to get a texture coordinate, copy it, put it again, drag this one into a panner, and drag this one into a 1-, and then drag the 1- into a panner. Now, once again, you're going to grab your texture, put it here, and put it here. Something like this. And then drag them into the UVs. Now, this is where things are going to get interesting. Drag this out to a desaturate. Saturation. And drag this into a power. You don't want to change this. So we're going to say 7. And leave it at 7. You're not going to want to change this. Bring this out to a multiply. And make the multiply around 4. And then drag this out into a multiply again. Now, come over here, somewhere right here. 3, left click. You're going to want to give a color, a deep, slightly washed out blue. Something like... something like this. Yeah, that could work. Perfect. Something like this. Go on to convert to a parameter. Name it top color. Drag this out to the B of the multiply node. Now, you're going to want to do, technically, you don't need this. This is not required, but it's the bit of extra detail. Technically, you're done. But if you want that extra detail, you're going to want to create something that represents... I forgot what they're called. What are they called? What are they called? It's not a powder, it's not a Fresnel. It's the weird blobby black and white stuff. I can't remember what it's called, but you're going to want to create one of those. And it's going to look like this. If you don't have... You're not going to have this by default. You're probably wondering, where the hell did I just pull this out of? It's something I made before. You're going to want to go into your local paint app of whatever you have. Maybe you have... I don't know, GIMP. Maybe you have Photoshop. Maybe you have Paint 3D. Maybe you have MS Paint. I don't know. Whatever you use. You're going to want to create this. Make the top white and then the rest black. You're going to want to make a smooth mixture. Don't make it harsh. Now, if this is too much work, then you don't need this part. But this is going to act as the north and south blues for that little bit of extra detail. But assuming you don't want to do that, for simplistic sake, we can say we're done. So if you don't want to do that, you don't need this lerp or the lerp alpha. You can just drag this into the base color and it will load. Give it a second. It would load as such. You're going to want to save. Give it a second to save. And then apply and save. Okay. Now, assuming you're comfortable with what you made, you're going to want to come over here. Let me click this. Sphere. There we go. You're not supposed to use nanite. Nanite does not work with spheres. To turn off nanite, you're going to want to... Or not spheres. Nanite does not work with translucent materials. So if you go to your model that you have, double click it. And it should open this. You're going to want to, where it says enable nanite support, make sure that's off. And there should be apply changes that you can click. Once you do that, just save. And now it should work. Now, this is Venus. Now you might be wondering, why is it so blue in comparison to what we have here? This is very white and very nice looking. Yes. In that case, we come back over here. No, this is the wrong one. Hold on. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. We'll come over here. You can see it's very blue. So, I'll come over here. Instead of 0.5, we'll do 0.2 or maybe even 0.001. You're going to want this color. So now if you save, apply, you're going to see it looks a lot less saturated. It's still blue. You can always change that once again. So if I go to my material, go back, change that value to maybe 0.003 is too much. You can say 0.002. Now you're going to see it's a lot less blue. But now the greens are more prominent. So 225, that could work, or just 0.003. If I make it bluer, to give you a heads up of what I'm doing, I'm just simply changing it from here. But I'm just putting it for display. So if I make it more blue, you can see it's a very much more blue atmosphere. If I make it more pale, you're gonna notice it's severely more pale. But for the sake of the understanding of this planet, I'd say here is a good example. And this is pretty much it. You can drag this out, put it right here, put it right next to the other Venus, and they're pretty much the same. It's just a matter of the colors of what you think Venus looks like. This is like hours of tweaking versus a quick little tutorial. Opposed mine, you can see it's a little more on the bluer end, and this one's a little more on the greener end. Technically, they do have the green. They all do. If I go somewhere that doesn't have that, you can see, if I can't look directly at the sun, you can see there's a little bit of green. And same with here. But it seems like this is severely stronger. So if I were to... if I were to get the atmosphere, 0.5. If I were to go to the green part, so let's say here, if I were to lower the brightness from 0.04 to 0.02, you're going to see that it's going to show a lot less of that green. But I think it looks nice, so I think this is good. This is a good turning point for Venus. Now, the very last part, the glow effect. Whether or not you want this glow effect or not, it's very, very easy. This could take less than 10 seconds to explain. So, let's see. You're going to want to create a local fog volume. Let me find the local fog volume first. Local fog volume. You're going to want to spawn it in. You're going to need a exponential height fog as well for this to work. And inside your exponential height fog, you're going to want to tick volumetric shadows or something like that. Yeah, let me go to here. Scroll down on your exponential height fog, volumetric fog. Make sure that's ticked or the local fog volume won't work. You're going to want to spawn this in. Now, if you're noticing you're getting close to the fog and it's disappearing, you have a few things. In the console command, you can type in r.localfogvolume.global start distance and make it a value, maybe something, I think default it's 2000. So if you want to get closer, let's say it's not too dramatic and you just want it slightly closer, 1000 could work very well. Maybe even closer, 500. I currently have it at 10 because my scale is super tiny. So make that a value of 10. And you're going to notice that you can get as close as you want. Now at distance, you might realize the fog disappears. If you want to see further, you absolutely can. But you're going to notice as soon as you spawn the exponential height fog, you're going to notice that the bottom is going to glow like a gray. Immediately, for easy fix, you're going to want to scroll down to where you see Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Fog max opacity. Make this 0.0001. And fog density 0.02. And fog height fall off as high as you can get it, like 2. Now that you've done that, go down to volumetric fog, where you ticked volumetric fog. Extinction scale, 0. Absolutely 0. This will completely eliminate the black ground effect. And the view distance, 50,000 or somewhere around that. This will extend the length at which you can see your local fog volume. So now you can back up as far as you want. Click your local fog volume. In the outliner, drag this into your planet under your thing, whereas right for now, mine says Tutorial Venus. And under Tutorial Venus, we have Atmosphere and Local Fog Volume. Click your local fog volume, scroll up all the way to where you see location. Make these 0, 0, 0, 0. This will make it 0, 0, 0 on the center of your planet. Now scale this to what meets the eye. If you think this is a good glow, maybe you want more stylized look. This glow will look nice. But personally, I think it looks terrible. I think I did forget to mention, if I can find it, there's a setting, yeah, where it says height fog fall off. Bring that all the way down to 1. This will stop it from being cut in half, because that is terrible. No one likes that. Now, radial fog density, make that 2, and height fog density, make that 1. Or not height fog density, make it 1, make it 50. So, 50 here, and 2 here. This will make it much more dense. Now lastly, for the scale, depending on the size of your planet, it's going to vary. But for me, that scale is 0.2025. And this will give a very faint glow around the planet. Do know if you attach a script to this planet, and you want it to move. If it's moving a little too fast, like I said before, you're going to notice ghosting. This is the volumetric fog. But if it's super slow, like a pixel every 10 minutes, or something along the lines of that, it's not gonna matter too much. So, yeah. But that is mainly it. How long has this been going for? 1 hour and 15 minutes. Good lord. But that should be everything for your planet. As you can see, the blue here is there for the old planet, and the blue here. Now, again, this is assuming you don't want to do that. If you do want to do that, and you're willing to make that material, make sure it looks like this. Where the top is white, fades slightly into a black. Now take that into a multiply. We gotta be quick. And drag this multiply into here. Now take this multiply into a lerp. Now, we're gonna do the same thing, but for the other side. So let's actually drag this down a little bit so it's not so in the way. We're gonna take a desaturation. Take it to a power node. Power. Make it 7. Take it to a multiply. Make it 4. And then drag this into a multiply. Drag that into the B, and have this connect to the color from before. Now, take this into a multiply, and drag this into the B of the lerp. Now, back to this multiply. you're going to want to grab your texture from before and put it here. And drag this into the B. You're going to want to create a panner node. Drag that into the panner. Drag the coordinate into a 1- node. And then texture coordinate. Texture coordinate going to a 1-, going into a panner, going to a texture sample. What this means is now the texture is going to be flipped at the bottom of the sphere. In fact, let me lit wireframe. You're going to see at the bottom of the sphere, this is going to be the white part because the 1- is flipping it upside down, opposed to this one being at the top. And why you're asking, we're adding white pieces and both ends. Well, this is going to act as the blue. The blue is affecting the multiply. So right now, let's say this one, let me actually turn off the lit wireframe. This is black and white. And we're taking the blue and multiplying it. So now this is going to turn blue. Now we're taking the texture sample. White means yes, the texture is existing here. Black means no. We're multiplying that. And now, like I said, white being the top means the texture exists. Black meaning no, the texture doesn't exist. And we did the same thing down here. We're lerping them so they're on top of each other. And look at that, they're both existing here. So now you can take this lerp and drag it into, let's say, bring this back here, assuming you're using this, preferably in the B. Let's take the A of the lerp and drag it into this. And now it should load. Give it a second. Good. And now you can see there's a faint blue. Now if we apply, give it a second, All right, save. We move out. You can see that there is a very, very faint blue up here. And a very, very faint blue down here. Although there is a little bit of ray tracing, so it's looking orange. Don't mind the orange, that's just the ray tracing. It's not ray tracing the atmospheres, it's ray tracing the orange of the inner piece. I don't know if it can ray trace the atmospheres. I don't think that's even possible, but maybe. I don't know. But this is going to conclude this. This was a very hard material. This is probably going to be the hardest material I will do. Looking at other materials, they are going to be a lot easier. But this one was the hardest. It looks not that bad. Looks pretty nice. Again, if you think it's still too blue or something, or looking back, let's say you are using rasterization, you're going to notice that it looks vastly different. And again, with rasterization, the fog becomes a big problem. So if you turn off the fog, it's not there. You don't have to use the fog, but it is there as an option. The bigger the object, the better it's going to behave. The smaller the objects, the more it's going to look glitchy. But if you believe that it is too blue or something, you can always just change that later. Alright, but I think that is it. Next time, I'm going to show you how to do Earth. It should be pretty fun. Or maybe I might actually do Mars. Oh boy. Mars could be a fun one. You never know. But that concludes this. I hope you enjoyed, and enjoy your Venus, whatever you're gonna do with me.